Thank you to the American Philatelic Society for their support in the making of this video. For information on membership and APS services, visit stamps.org.
The Allied armies are closing in on Hitler's Third Reich. The British and Americans from the west, the Russians from the east. Hitler is trapped. Millions of the German people hail Hitler as the man who can lead them to greatness. The others are afraid to oppose him.
This stamp has the image of a man that we all know of, Adolf Hitler. It was of course issued during the Nazi rule over Germany in 1941 and has the words Deutsches Reich at the bottom for the German realm or empire. The value of this stamp was 12 Pfennig of the German Reichsmark, and there is a cancellation as it has been used. The stamp was on a piece of mail that was sent on the 19th of May in 1943 from the town of Remscheid, located in western Germany. After looking the town up, I realized that this stamp was sent less than 2 months before the town was almost completely destroyed by a British bombing raid. The stamp's color is lilac red and measures 22 by 25 millimeters. This is giving me the opportunity to talk about an operation during World War II that philatelists and postal historians love to talk about. It involves the infiltration of the German postal service. Postage stamps played a key role in secret World War II missions codenamed Operation Cornflakes. But before we get there, let's talk about the stamp. Yes, it is a picture of Adolf Hitler, a man who gained control of Germany through a dictatorship in 1933 and transformed the country into a totalitarian state where pretty much every aspect of life was controlled by the government. He was ultimately responsible for the deaths of tens of millions of lives, from the perpetration of the Holocaust to placing the world into a terrifying war that became the deadliest human conflict in history. Adolf Hitler is considered to be one of the most destructive and evil people to have ever lived, yet here he is on a postage stamp, on my desk, and this brings up a very important point. Philatelists are exposed to all aspects of history. We are exposed to the good, the fascinating, the exciting, the heroic, and the inspiring histories. And then there's the uncomfortable, the difficult, and the horrifying histories that can be found on stamps. What a philatelist can find and hold in their hands are pieces of real and important history, and there is no filter or curriculum or agenda other than that of what the government or postal service chose to put on their stamps at that point in time. As a philatelist, you can steer your collection and learnings any way you want to, and can absolutely choose to avoid histories such as this one. Or you could choose to seek them out, to learn more about a particular time and place, and the role that stamps and the postal service may have had in that history. In this case, there's much to be learned about the German people living in a totalitarian state, or the other countries that were involved, whether they were the victims or the occupiers, or even the other participants that were willingly or unwillingly brought into the war. Hitler head stamps such as this one are super easy to come across. Along with other Third Reich stamps that were issued for 12 years, special postmarks and other postal stationery are plenty as well. There's a lot to look out for, and a lot can be learned about Nazi Germany and the workings of its postal service through the many artifacts that remain. Remember, as collectors, we are custodians of history. We obtain and preserve artifacts, these little pieces of paper, so we're preserving history, real history, and a reminder of the past. One thing that I found interesting is that apparently Hitler charged a royalty for the use of his image on postage stamps. So the German people sending mail were without choice supporting Hitler's personal finances by purchasing these definitive stamps. A small percentage of the price of the stamp went to him. Also, something to clearly acknowledge is that stamps are an excellent way of introducing a small piece of propaganda into people's homes. By using the image of Hitler's face, along with Nazi imagery such as the swastika, stamps were helping to surround the everyday lives of the German people with Nazism and provide constant reinforcement of the regime and World War efforts. They also served as a celebration of the man himself. Several stamps were issued for Hitler's birthday, along with special cancellations to mark the events. This stamp was issued in 1939, celebrating his 50th birthday in his birth town in Austria. And this first day cover from occupied Poland is celebrating his 54th birthday in 1943. Both of these are semi-postals. A semi-postal was used to raise money for a particular purpose as charity for a cause. They are also known as charity stamps, and they can be recognized by the presence of two values separated by a plus sign. The first value is the value of the postage, while the second indicates the charitable contribution. Many of these Third Reich semi-postals were providing for Hitler's secret and unknown welfare charities. Now, there's a lot more to learn about semi-postals, World War II stamps, Nazi propaganda, and so on. Postal history and stamps have captured and documented some incredibly interesting aspects of the World Wars. If you're looking for a fascinating look at wartime Europe through stamps, you should look for this book. It's titled European Stamp Issues of the Second World War, Images of Triumph, Deceit, and Despair, and it's by David Parker. It gives an interesting breakdown of what stamps were issued by European countries during the Second World War and describes the circumstances for which countries were printing and using these stamps. The same author also wrote a book for the European stamp issues of the First World War, so I'll put the information for both of these books in the description below. Now, let's turn our attention to Operation Cornflakes, and we'll start with the need. At the beginning of 1945, Germany was on the run. The Allies were advancing through Europe. The Battle of the Bulge was being won by the Allies in the west, while Russia was quickly advancing in the east. One thing that was getting harder for the Allies to do was circulate propaganda. As countries were being liberated, the Allied forces were no longer able to rely on resistance groups behind enemy lines, or slip through the many border opportunities that now no longer existed as the German front line had receded. With all the chaos that was going on behind the German lines, there was a desire to take advantage of it, to perhaps further lower the morale of the German people, discourage them from resisting when the Allies walk into their cities, and to even convince them that there's an anti-Nazi group within Germany that was looking forward to the fall of Hitler and eager for a new Germany. This was the essence of Operation Cornflakes. It was a psychological operation looking to influence the German people and provoke a reaction. An operation that would use black propaganda. Black propaganda is different from white and grey propaganda. White propaganda, the most common, is leaving it obvious as to who is sending the messages. British or German planes dropping leaflets over your town demonizing your government or occupier is exactly that. You know who is sending it, and you take it for what it's worth. Grey propaganda is messaging where the source is unknown. You don't know who is transmitting the radio messages or creating and distributing leaflets, and thus protecting the source who could be persecuted if found. And then there is black propaganda, which is deliberately devious and can be the most difficult to circulate and get in the hands of someone. The purpose was to make it appear that someone else was sending these messages. By receiving black propaganda, you were being led to believe that someone around you, perhaps an institution or your very own neighbors, were sending you these messages, and it could cause you to question everything about what is going on. The most notable effort of black propaganda during the Second World War was Das Neue Deutschland. This was the alleged liberation group that was completely made up in June of 1944 by the American Office of Strategic Services, the OSS. They printed and circulated a newsletter throughout the Reich under the same name. It had impressive levels of success. It was printed in Algiers and then eventually Rome and smuggled into Germany, all made to look as if it was printed by the German liberation group that actually didn't exist. There was an incredible amount of research and effort that went into the making of this newsletter, to not arouse the suspicion of the German people and to convince them that this was truly printed within Germany by a liberation group that was eager to see the fall of Hitler. You had to get all the details right. For the German people and soldiers, this kind of information gave validity to their doubts, believing that there was this group in Germany that was being vocal about the ongoings of the Nazi Party, discrediting the propaganda circulated by the Nazis, and ultimately talking about a future without the Nazi Party in power, actually proved to have an impact on the readers. Of course, I encourage you to look up more about Das Neue Deutschland. There's so much to learn about the campaign and the impressive success it had. Now, the OSS, America's Office of Strategic Services, that was actually formed during the Second World War and would eventually be incorporated into the CIA, saw a need to continue reaching the German population and continue combating the Nazi propaganda. This would add to the chaos and continue to lower the civilian and military morale. This could also help to discourage the German people from resisting when the Allies arrived. But as I mentioned earlier, getting copies of this fake newsletter along with other propaganda into the hands of the German people was increasingly difficult. There was less and less opportunity for success. So the OSS came up with a very simple idea. Just have the German Postal Service deliver the propaganda directly to the people. Of course, you can't exactly mail propaganda into Germany at this point. It would have to be sent from within. And this was critical to preserving the appearance that this mail or these messages were being sent from other Germans or a liberation group. So Operation Cornflakes was set in motion. The plan was to attack and disable trains carrying mail, and then plant counterfeit mail bags containing the propaganda around the debris. This was in hopes that the counterfeit mail bags would be thrown in with the real mail bags while the train was being cleared up, and then continue on to their intended recipients. The German people would then, while having breakfast, open up the counterfeit mail and read the propaganda. Hence the name Operation Cornflakes, feeding the population propaganda for breakfast. Now, for this to work, so much needs to be thought out. For instance, the mail must not look suspicious in any way, it must be addressed to real people, and the mail planted around the trains needs to correspond with the destination of the train. Now, how is this done? By air. Planes would chase and attack the trains carrying mail, and then drop the mail bags around the train. The type of plane was an American Lockheed P-38. These fighter bomber planes flown by the 14th Fighter Squadron of the 15th Air Force were capable of long-range missions, dive bombing, ground attack, and reconnaissance. These fighter bombers were perfect for the mission. According to declassified OSS documents, 20 of these missions were successfully executed between the months of February and April of 1945, and perhaps 320 of these mail bags carrying Das Neue Deutschland and counterfeit mail were dropped during those missions. So what is the connection between the Hitler head stamp that I pulled from the box and this operation? Well, the OSS had to produce forgeries of those Hitler head definitives to use on their counterfeit mail, and this would allow the mail to travel through the German postal system. Both the 6 and 12 Phoenix stamps were produced by the OSS and look like these. At first glance they look identical, but you can tell that the OSS didn't get the coloring right for the stamps. The paper is different and the perforation is very different. Anywhere between 11 and 13 versus the genuine stamps with a perforation of 14. But added to an envelope with a forged postmark, the counterfeit mail would remain undetected in what was already a strained and stressed postal system. During the war, the British had also made forgeries, and theirs were superior in quality because they were using actual printing facilities, whereas the Americans were using what was available to them in Switzerland and in Italy, including ink, dyes, and paper, which was very limited. But these would definitely fool me, although it doesn't really take a lot to fool me. Anyway. There was a parody stamp also produced by the OSS for the red 12 Phoenix stamp. It portrays Hitler's head with a death skull. Now, the purpose of this stamp was to ridicule and embarrass Adolf Hitler. The words Deutsches Reich are replaced with Futsches Reich, meaning ruined or lost empire. But there hasn't been any proof that these stamps were actually used on their envelopes during the operation. No covers have turned up. It's more likely that it was placed inside the envelope for the German people to find, instead of placed on the outside where it could jeopardize the delivery of the propaganda. Now, I don't know if these particular ones on my desk are real. I mean, real fakes instead of fake fakes. You see, the real fakes, the ones produced by the OSS for the operation, are the desired stamps. The genuine ones produced by Germany are easy to come across and worth very little. In this case, it is the forgeries that are the most sought after. Of course, there are fakes of those forgeries and they're worth nothing. So while I know that these are fakes and not genuine German stamps, I just don't know if they're fake fakes or genuine fakes. The stamps were printed in both Bern, Switzerland, as well as in Rome, Italy, before making their way to be packaged and then flown into Germany. These were very secretive black ops missions. Almost nothing was known about them until FDR's stamp collection went up for auction after his death. He had been given these stamps by the director of the OSS for his collection. So was this operation a success, and did it have an impact on the war? Well, it was a success in that some of the counterfeit mail is known to have made its way through the German postal system and actually get delivered. But was it impactful? Many are quick to say that the German morale was already low at this point, that they may have ignored the propaganda, and that only a small amount of the mail actually made it to its final destination due to the strain on the postal system. But it's really difficult to tell whether or not this had a further impact on the people's morale. There is no definitive way to tell. What is known is that the operation did take place, that fake stamps were produced, and that the German postal service was targeted and infiltrated. Now, I just gave a very high-level overview of the events that unfolded and the preparation behind them. In the American Philatelist of February 1971, there is an article written by Herbert Friedman as he was researching and shedding light on the mystery behind the operation. He has gone on to do a tremendous amount of research and work to learn more about Operation Cornflakes. I have provided additional links in the description below. And of course, I encourage you to look up more about black propaganda and this World War II postal operation. Thank you all for watching episode 16. Operation Cornflakes is the ultimate story of World War II propaganda, one that required secrecy and postage stamps. More videos are to come, so make sure to subscribe. Until next time, happy exploring.